Are you crushing it in the gym, but yet you feel like you're being crushed? Your progress has stalled, everything maybe feels a little achy, and you're wondering what is going on. Well, in today's podcast, we're going to discuss whether or not you're eating enough to reach your goals. This is actually quite common for a lot of athletes, and especially kind of type A, progressive, very active-minded athletes, is they'll take their training very serious. They'll crush themselves in the gym. They also do take their nutrition serious. However, they crush themselves in their nutrition, meaning they often limit what they eat in fear of gaining body fat or just overeating, maybe having a sense of lack of discipline. There are many reasons why they'll restrict what they eat. And the issue becomes they actually end up over-restricting. I'm going to share in today's podcast a couple client stories of where they needed to eat more, including even to lose body fat. One of my recent clients, she was rehabbing an injury from a powerlifting meet. She did a powerlifting meet a couple months ago and detached her bicep. In the preparation for that meet, we had worked together in the kind of the latter portion of it. And before that, before we started working together, she was doing things on her own. And she was feeling beat up, feeling tired, progress had stalled. She had tried to do more, eat less. And then she reached out and said, hey, this isn't working. Can you come in and help out? So I was able to help out for a couple weeks, get everything back on track, get her body feeling good. She ended up going to that meet, setting a world record. Freaking awesome, great meet. But unfortunately, on her second attempt on biceps, she did, on deadlift, her second attempt on deadlifts, she did detach her bicep. She had surgery for that, and about 15, 16 weeks later, we ended up doing another powerlifting meet. She PR'd her squat, her bench, and her deadlift, even set a world record again. That was 16 weeks, I think roughly 15, 16 weeks after having her bicep reattached. So pretty awesome job, pretty cool. So in that process, what became very important was nutrition for rehab. Often when people are rehabbing injuries, they will eat less, assuming that since they're training less, they need less food. There's an issue with that, is that yes, your activity decreased, but your demand for protein, your demand for energy to utilize that protein didn't decrease as much as people might think. Where people get in trouble whenever they are in rehab or in a season where they're decreasing their activity for whatever reason, and they're fearful of gaining body fat, it's usually related to a mistiming of what they eat. Meaning they don't eat more when they move more and eat less when they move less. They tend to just eat less during the day, but still eat a normal amount at night. They'll still eat their normal dinner, maybe even have a snack or two after dinner because they underate so much during the day that they're hungry at night. So it's the inconsistent eating in the sense that our eating doesn't match our activity. That's why they'll often gain some body fat and experience higher water retention due to higher cortisol, due to being underfed during the day, that they'll feel as though they're gaining body fat. Even if their calories are controlled, the calories are just misallocated, and that becomes part of the problem as well. So what we look to do when we're doing injury rehab is we want to have protein. We want to have sufficient protein to rehab all the tissues and damages and everything that the body needs to do to get itself back on track, get it back to where we want it to be, back to optimal. Usually for that, I will have the person, depending on their activity level, there's a lot of variety there, but the protein is usually somewhere between 0.6 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, and that's relative lean body weight. We're not going to do like a DEXA scan or any kind of craziness to try to figure that out. We would just guesstimate, okay, what's your body weight if you were around, say, a male, 12 to 15% body fat, for a female, maybe around 20% body fat, what would be around that weight? Okay, we're going to use that and do 0.6 to 1.2 grams. If the person doesn't lift weights, we're going to be on the lower end, 0.6 maybe to 0.8. If they lift weights at all, and they're still semi-active, if they have a decent amount of muscle tissue because of what they were doing before the injury, we're going to be around 0.8 maybe up to 1 gram per pound of body weight. If they're still training, so for this athlete, we still train their lower body. For lower body, we did safety squat bar squats, and we actually got a deadlift strap from Spud Inc., which is a company that makes straps and accessories for bodybuilding, for powerlifting, for lifting weights, basically. We got a deadlift strap, so that way she could still deadlift and do hinge movements like RDLs and stuff like deadlifts, but not need to hold onto the bar with her hand. That allowed us to still train her lower body. We actually trained her lower body 3 days a week. So she was still extremely active. So our protein was around 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. Protein is going to be evenly distributed throughout the day as best as we can because our body uses it all day, every day, as best as it can. So it makes sense then that our protein is going to be relatively consistent throughout the day, minus obviously when we're asleep. Then for energy, which would be carbohydrates and fats, it depends on the person's preference, whether they like fat-based foods or carb-based foods. It also depends on the timing we're eating. If we're eating within, say, 1 or 2 hours of workout, carbohydrates are probably going to be the better choice. If we're eating further out from that, fats might be a good choice. It also depends on the type of workout, whether you're doing explosive strength-based training, or if you're an endurance athlete, you might want to lean a little bit more into fats since your activity might take longer. You would actually benefit still from a slower digested, a slower released energy source. But for carbs and fats, we're going to be peaking those around our time of highest activity, which is if you're working out, it's going to be around your workout. If you're not working out, it would be still your most active time of the day. So we would actually have our energy in kind of, if you think of an optical illustration, I don't know how you do another different type of illustration. So if we think of an illustration, we're going to think of it as a bell curve. Is we want the peak of our energy nutrients, our carbs and fats, coming in when we're at the peak of our activity. And then it's going to kind of taper into that, and it's going to taper out of that. If we structure our energy calories with that peak in mind, that bell curve in mind, around our peak activity, but we keep protein consistent, that is going to fuel our recovery, but also minimize body fat. What usually happens in most cases is the person will go to bed not feeling overly hungry, but if you were to ask them, hey, would you be able to eat right now? They'd be like, yeah, I'm not stuffed, I'm not overly full. I could eat, but I'm not going to. And they can still go to sleep and feel good sleeping. But they wake up hungry. They wake up and they're like, okay, I'm ready for my next meal, my first meal actually of the day. If we have that sensation, it's likely then that their calories are at the right amount and that they're structured properly throughout the day. If you're putting all your food at the end of the day, you absolutely will not have your peak body composition and you will not peak your recovery components for whatever injury and issue you're trying to rehab. So that's what we did with that client. And like I said, we went from a world record, had to get a bicep reattachment surgery. 16 weeks later, all PRs and a new world record. So it went pretty well. I have another client. She's a CrossFit coach. She actually owns her own CrossFit box and a high-level CrossFit athlete. She's been to the CrossFit Games, top 2% in the world in CrossFit. And what she was experiencing was she was crazy busy, trained all the time, absolutely loves to train. But her body didn't match her activity level, meaning she was fit, but it wasn't that lean, hard look that she wanted, and it was just this softer physique than what she felt like her knowledge and her activity should warrant. Why didn't her body match the efforts that she was putting in the gym? We started talking, and it came down to a very similar issue. Is she was not eating enough during the day to fuel all of the activity that she was doing. She wasn't overeating at night, which is why she was actually still lean. But she wasn't eating enough during the day. And what that happens, like what that causes, is the body feels stressed during the day. It increases its cortisol production. That causes an increase in water retention. That reduces fat burning. That reduces the process of building muscle. And if it's prolonged over time, it reduces strength progression as well. So she was underfueling her performance. She was underfueling her recovery and then definitely underfueling her adaptations. That is why her strength and her performance plateaued, and why her body was looking soft, and she was killing it in the gym, but she felt like she was getting killed back. Everything was achy, went from a shoulder issue to a tricep issue to a lower back issue. It was just kind of bouncing all around. The body was struggling with recovery. So what we did was a very similar thing. We said, okay, are we eating enough protein? And then are we eating enough food during the day? She's highly busy, lots of classes, a lot of activity. She doesn't have time for food. Very reasonable. So for her, an aspect that we leaned into was caloric density. We had to find foods that had a lot of calories, but in a small volume. A great example of this is oils. If you think of avocado oil, olive oil, macadamia nut oil, coconut oil, those types of oils, there's a lot of calories. There's 9 calories per gram when you look at fats. And oils are easier to consume than solid food. So for example, drinking maybe 180 calories of oil, not that you'd necessarily want to drink that, you'd probably pour that over your food. If you're having, say, chicken and rice, you would pour that over the rice and the chicken. But having 180 calories from oil is easier than having 180 calories from nuts. They're both fat-based. Yes, nuts have more carbs and some protein in them, but it's going to be a little bit easier to eat the oil because you just pour it into what you're already eating. It really doesn't add size or volume to what you're eating. It's, in a sense, hidden calories. So that's what we were looking to do for her. We tried to find, okay, here's all the foods you're currently eating. Here's maybe the bottom 1/3 of the foods you currently eat that aren't calorically dense. Can we start to swap some of these out for foods that are more calorically dense? She wanted to have, and it's a good thing for her, to have vegetables and fruit still in her diet. It helped with digestion, it helped fight against constipation, helped with hydration as well. So we kept the fruits and vegetables in her diet for sure, even though fruits and vegetables aren't considered calorically dense. But we did drizzle oil onto the vegetables. That was one of the big changes we made for her that helped to boost her calories during the day, but it didn't increase her overall food volume. She eventually got to where she had veins over her abs. Lean and mean, looking great, and we've been progressing her strength ever since. So she's performing really well. She just recently went through the CrossFit Open, crushed all those things. I forget where she's ranking right now in the world, but it's super high. It's into like the double digits, like number 44 or something, 40, something like that. But she's doing really well. And the big change for her was getting her to have more calories during the day. So I do have that phrase, eat more when you move more, eat less when you move less. Eat more can be in reference to just more calories, not more volume. And in her situation, that was exactly what was important, is we needed to increase the calories, but not the volume. So playing around with caloric density was how we progressed the concept that I explained in the first client, the rehab client. We knew that we had to have protein sufficient and consistent, and then we had to have energy nutrients peaked around her workouts. For this client, we took those same concepts, but we added the concept of caloric density. Now, the third client story I'm going to share is a powerlifter, crazy strong powerlifter. He's going to be going, he actually has a 10 times body weight total in the gym. We have to put that together yet in a meet, but we've been very close, I think within 15 pounds of a 10 times body weight in powerlifting meet. And we were discussing meet day, powerlifting meet day, like their competition day, nutrition. He was asking recently about the using sugary soda. He wondered if using soda would be helpful to get a little bit of caffeine, to get some sugars, and that might give him a little bit of energy during the day. He noticed that some of his friends who do running, long distance running, they use simple sugars to help fuel their activity. So during their run, they might drink sugary soda. They might, and it's more common, that they're going to use gel packs, like sugar goo, basically, gel packs, and they'll consume that. They might drink some a mixture of water and or Gatorade at their like stations where they're running past the drink stations. But they're going to fuel with sugary liquids to a percentage of their overall fuel source. It's definitely not their only fuel source. I do help people run marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans, and all that stuff. So we have proper nutrition leading all the way into the event, the morning of the event, but then during the event, it isn't uncommon, and it's actually common practice, to use sugary drinks and goos to sustain some glycogen intake, so that way as you're burning off energy, you're bringing some in. And you're bringing it in at a rate that the body can actually utilize. It wouldn't help us to consume fats during a race if the fats take 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to digest and become usable. Not helpful. Now, he was looking at that sport compared to powerlifting. If we look at a marathon compared to powerlifting, they're both going to take several hours, but they're very different. So a marathon, you're consistently moving the entire time. Powerlifting, you're sitting on your butt, then you're going to stretch a little bit, warm up, hit a big lift, then sit on your butt, stretch a little bit, warm up, hit a big lift, sit on your butt. There is going to be a significant amount of time, sometimes an hour and a half or more, between the squat, the bench, and then the deadlift. So you squat, have basically an hour and a half-ish break, bench, hour and a half-ish break, and then deadlift. It is not the same type of energy usage rate that you would see with marathon runners. So using sugary drinks is actually not something that I would recommend, and certainly not having it be anywhere near a significant portion of your daily calories. Is it going to be bad to drink some Gatorade or drink a diet soda? Hell no, that's fine. But you don't, I mean, not a diet soda, I'm sorry, a sugary soda in Gatorade, that would be fine. But you don't want that to be the bulk of your calories. That's not what you're leaning on. That's just something to quench your thirst. But we're actually going to be looking for whole foods, and we're going to be looking at quickly digestible whole foods. So we don't want it so fast that it's like a liquid sugar where it's in your system in, say, 15, 20 minutes, but then out of your system in 60 minutes or so. We actually want something trickling into our system consistently throughout the day. So that way we don't have highs and lows, which would contribute to adrenal fatigue by the end of the day. You don't want to go into your deadlifts having extreme adrenal fatigue from having high caffeine and sugar bursts, a big lift in squats, and then you come down from that sugar and caffeine, then you try to do it again, ramp everything back up for bench press, then you come down out of that, you're going to be extremely adrenal fatigued by deadlifts. So what we'd rather do is we'd rather focus on whole foods, but fast digesting whole foods. So that way they're digesting continuously, so they're available for usage, but it's a nice kind of moderate level energy throughout the day. We can dip into it when we need to and then replenish it when we need to. But it's a nice kind of level state flow of energy coming in rather than extreme peaks and valleys. In order to do that, we're going to be looking at the three concepts we talked about already. Is protein on meet day isn't super duper important, but you wouldn't want to have it be highly peaked or non-existent completely. It's not really high priority, but if you're going to have it, you would have it relatively even throughout the day. There's not a need to front load protein at the beginning of the day. And if anything, you're going to backload protein after you've done your deadlifts, because now your body has a whole mess of a day of damage. So you're going to get the protein for sure at the end of the day, but protein would be consistent during the day and then a lot of it at night. Your energy, like we said, is since we're having three major peaks on a meet day, the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, we don't want to have those extreme peaks and valleys. We want to just sustain a good amount throughout the day. We then look at caloric density. Yes, we want that. But what we're going to add to this athlete is digestive timing. So when we eat the food, when does it become available to us? If we look at simple carbohydrate food sources, such as muffins, brownies, cookies, now there are going to be some fats in those things, but we want to look for the lower fat content versions of those. You can look at bagels, breads. If you wanted to, you could have pasta and oatmeal, but that's not anywhere near as fun as the things I've already named. So I usually encourage people to look into those kind of like breaded-based products, muffins, brownies, cookies, bagels, things where they enjoy eating. They're going to want to eat it even if they're a little nervous. They're like, yeah, this tastes good. You know, I don't really want to eat right now, but I'm not going to say no to a brownie. That kind of thing. We're going to have that, but we're going to have that kind of evenly, consistently throughout the day. So we're looking at foods that digest relatively quickly within 1 to 2 hours, and we have a little bit every 1 to 2 hours. So we eat a little bit before squats, not too much to where they feel digestive stress, and then maybe they're in the the bathroom before their squat. We don't want to do that. So we eat about 1 or 2 hours before squats. I would actually push that more so to 2. Then after squats, get a little bit to drink, and then you eat a little bit more. And then that's roughly about 1 to 2 hours before bench press. After bench press, you get something to drink, you eat a little bit more. That's about 1 to 2 hours before deadlift. And then after deadlift, go get a bunch of protein and have a happy victory meal. So we're looking at, for that athlete, we control protein, we control our energy timing, our fats and carbs timing. Then we look at caloric density. We don't want to eat a ton of volume of food. So that's why cookies and brownies and muffins are helpful, because there's a lot of calories and not a lot of volume of food. But then we look at digestive timing. We want foods that digest within about 1 to 2 hours so they're usable at the next big lift. So it's fun to see that across these 3 clients, we can kind of layer the concepts that we've discussed. Protein timing, energy timing, caloric density, and then digestive timing. These are really fun elements that when you control them well, you can maximize your performance, your outcome, your adaptations, the overall results. This is awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. And the more you learn about these elements, the greater your experience is going to be while you're pushing towards your goals, and then the more efficient you're going to get to your goals, and the better overall outcome you're going to get for your goals. If you would like to know more about nutrition coaching, we do offer nutrition coaching system implementation for personal trainers and health-related businesses like physical therapists, massage therapists, you name it, whatever it might be. I've just talked to a yoga instructor recently about this system, and that was a really cool discussion. She helps certify instructors for yoga and wanted to include nutritional education in that certification as well. So we have a whole system. We'll teach you everything you need to know on how to help people create customized, personalized nutrition programs, and then how you modify that for each individual, and then how you modify that over time. If you would like to learn more about that, you can learn about it on our website, c3method.com. It's C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. It's a whole big system. You get virtual education with me. Right now, we have the system taking about 3 hours to teach. So we sit down, we go through every single step. I answer all your questions. It's just me and you for 3 hours. I answer everything you need. You'll get an ebook that includes all the resources, and then it comes with 3 months of support. If you have a question, if your clients have a question, I will help you out for 3 months. So that way, as you're implementing the system, you get the help for everything and anything that comes up along the way. Again, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website, c3method.com. You can also reach out to us on all of our social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, just reach out and I will get you back in touch with you. So thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you need anything, please reach out. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your support. And that's it. So thank you very much.